10 days, 400 companies and more than 1 million visitors. This is the 86th Izmir International Fair, and it's just as popular today as it's been for nearly a century. This year, virtual reality technology exhibits are attracting the most attention. And the organizers say that's always been a key strength of this trade exhibition.
Teknolojik gelişmenin, dünyanın teknoloji gelişmesini de burada gördüler.
Most major technologies have been introduced to Turkish people through the Izmir International Fair. The first Turkish car, Anadolu, was launched here. The country's first television and the first refrigerator were also introduced here. So for 86 years, it has been the place to showcase technology.
Turkey's biggest consumer brands agree what grabs people in Izmir spreads rapidly across the rest of the country.
Izmir International Fair is one of the biggest fairs in Turkey, and also it has a traditional meaning for Turkish people. As a local brand, we know this importance, so we want to be a part of this big organization.
This year's event kicked off with meetings between Turkish and Russian government officials who are keen to triple trade to $100 billion. For that to happen, many more businesses would have to connect, and the place to do it is the Izmir Fair.
Our participation in this Izmir International Fair is the proof that we are on the right way. It is our sincere desire to move forward and to explore new ways of developing cooperation. Thus, we have brought about 300 participants, both from the government side and from the business side, to take part in this fair. And also what we pay attention to, we bring 6 regions from different parts of Russia. Not only those who have quite developed ties, but the newcomers.
One of these companies is industrial components maker Mitek, which is hoping to make major inroads into the Turkish market.
In Turkey, there are many companies that need processed metals. That's our speciality, so we see immense potential for business here.
If the trade fair can help such companies grab new deals, trade between Turkey and Russia could soon balloon. Mobin Nasir, TRT World, Izmir.
TRT World senior business producer Mobin Nasir is back from Izmir and joins me on set. Mobin, let's just pick up where we left off last week. Russia lifted most of the trade restrictions it had put in place 2 years ago. Why has it taken so long to end the ban on the import of Turkish tomatoes?
Well, first of all, in conversation with us, the Russian Economic Development Deputy Minister was very keen on stressing that this is not any kind of diplomatic stiff arm to Turkey. So let's go back to what is the context here. As you know, Russia has been under sanctions for quite a few years now, and that has taken an impact on its economy. But one area that's proven very resilient is the agriculture sector, food supplies. We saw it in the case of cheese, where when the cheese imports were shut down, local producers provided not only volume, but also a lot of variety. And the same seems to be happening in the case of tomatoes, where a lot of growers have invested in greenhouses, in other enabling infrastructure, and now the Russian government is under pressure to prolong the restrictions so that they can recuperate their losses. While they are promising to lift these restrictions, we can expect more competition going forward, not only from foreign sellers, but also from the local growers.
Well, let's look at the Izmir Fair. What makes this year's event so important?
Well, of course, as we saw, there was not just a sizable presence of Russian businesses and government representatives. They were also a partner in this expo. Of course, that is a bit of a statement, considering this is the oldest trade fair in the country. But then also the geographical location of the city itself. It's the 3rd largest city behind Ankara and Istanbul. Of course, Ankara being the seat of government is not really the industrial hub as such. So Izmir is a port city that can connect not only to the local markets, but also to North Africa. And this was a way for showcasing to Russian sellers how they could use that city perhaps to connect to other markets as well. And then, of course, were the agreements that they signed on there. And I know you're going to ask me about that. So here's the shakedown on that. Of course, energy, as always, was front and center, and the energy minister did stress that the plans to build a pipeline from Russia to Turkey are on pace. About 179 kilometers of that pipeline have been laid. But what's interesting is that some of the areas that the new cooperation agreements are being signed in are things like healthcare, information technology, education, areas where the two countries have not necessarily been trading a whole lot. And that's the interesting part, that they seem to be pivoting to these non-traditional sectors now.
But energy, as you just mentioned, it still is Russia's biggest export. Were you able to get a sense of how they're dealing with low oil prices?
So again, the energy minister, Alexander Novak, he did stress that Russia is open to cutting down supply. As you know, Russia did agree with OPEC to limit supplies, to freeze supplies, and the idea was that oil prices would bounce back. But that hasn't really worked so far, because whatever shortage they were able to create has been filled up by the likes of Libya, Nigeria, Iraq, who are exempt from limiting their production and have a lot of capacity to boost up production. So definitely this is a major concern for the Russian government. They need to come up with ways to deal with it. We know that the Saudis, the other big producer, are already looking towards diversification. Russia, despite all the talk, has not really been able to diversify its export markets to that extent.
Let's just look at agriculture and tourism, just very briefly. What do you think Russia stands to get out of those sectors?
That's a very interesting question, especially when it comes to agriculture. It seems that there's a win-win situation developing here. Look, Russia, if there's one thing they have, is a lot of land. The average size of a farm in Russia is more than 10 times that of Europe. And so there could be a case of where the Turkish producers provide quality, whereas they provide the economies of scale and hopefully come up with a stronger market position on both sides.
Well, that's senior business producer Mobin Nasir. We thank you for your time.